finally, ambiguity can quite often be created just by words that either look the same or sound the same but have completely different meanings. And again, quite often we think that's a bad thing, but you know what? Why can't we let those ambiguities sort of guide us down new paths? Give us this, direct us into something that we hadn't possibly imagined. So how do you go about doing that? Well, a very simple way of doing that is you select a short text and then you highlight all the words that are potential ambiguities. So you highlight all of the homographs, all the homonyms, the homophones, all of those. And then, this next part, I'm going to give you an example of the way this can completely transform something that's very well known. So you're probably very familiar with this poem. It's Robert Frost's famous poem. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveller. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. So now I've taken all of the words that have more than one, that have a homograph or a homonym. So for two and two, roads and roads, in and in, so on and so forth. And there's actually more, but I just couldn't fit them all on the screen. And then what I've done is I've gone through and I've tried to sort of work out a way that I can take a different path, so to speak, no pun intended, and see whether or not that can transform this poem into a poem about something completely different. Now, the key to this, you can see I've only changed 1, 2, 3, 4 words and adjusted the punctuation. But really, the change in meaning here hinges on just one word, and that word is roads. Because in looking for potential homographs or homophones, I've gone roads. Well, how else could you spell roads? Or how does it sound? R-O-D-E-S. So I looked that up, not knowing that roads is also a rope. A road is a rope. That's this very specific use of the word. But now that I've substituted that in, it completely changes the way that we can read this poem, because all of a sudden two roads diverged in a yellow wood. So two ropes diverged in a yellow wood end. So end here being the end of something as opposed to the conjunction. Sorry, I could not travel both and be. One traveller, long I stood and looked down. One, as far as I could. Two, where it bent in the undergrowth. So all of a sudden, this poem becomes a poem no longer about a road in the woods. It becomes about two ropes that someone finds at the end of the wood, and they don't know what to do with these two ropes, but one of them, they decide to wear it. There's nothing profound here, but it's just a nice little bit of fun to see the way that, these ambiguities can completely change the direction of a text. This brings us to two different kinds of misunderstandings. The first one being malapropism. So malapropism, based on or coined in honour of Mrs. Malaprop from The Rivals, basically where a character uses a word that sounds similar incorrectly, and it has some kind of humorous or comical effect. So these examples, you've got promise to forget this fellow, to illiterate him, I say quite from your memory. Our watch, sir, have indeed comprehended two auspicious persons. Was most putrefied with astonishment. Gave us a few well-frozen worms in praise of society. And of course, I resemble that remark. So the potential here is to give students the opportunity to actually take a text that you're studying and introduce some malapropisms for the fun of it, to give them a chance to make fun of a particular character, to subvert a text, to take the most powerful character and make them look like a fool, and see what that does to the rest of the plot. Mondegreen's very similar kind of idea. Basically, here it's a lyric usually that's been misheard and then obviously repeated. The most famous one in the context of teaching English is probably The Catcher in the Rye, which is a misunderstanding of the Robert Burns poem. So some great examples here. So when a man loves a walnut, all along the watchtower, hit me with your pet shark. She's got a tick in her eye. Now, the potential with these is, in a way, a little bit more than the malapropisms, because you can actually then take this one misunderstanding and apply it to the entire song lyric. So you take when a man loves a walnut and change all of the relevant words to make it literally about a man who loves a walnut as opposed to a woman. All along the watchtower becomes a song about the routine of washing clothes in some kind of communal setting. Pat Benatar's song becomes this kind of bizarre, surreal song about, hitting each other with fish. And the Beatles all of a sudden lose all of their romantic innocence, I guess you'd say. Finally, for this section, the idea of snow clones and catch structures. Basically, these are where you take a cliche, some kind of well-known phrase, and you appropriate it, you adapt it, you make some kind of shift in it for a particular, usually subversive or satirical kind of purpose. One group that does this really well is Public Enemy, especially in the titles of their songs. So from New World Order, you get New World Odor, from Birth of a Nation, so the famous D.W. Griffith film, which is actually quite a racist film. Public Enemy have taken that and turned it into Rebirth of a Nation. Rebel without a pause instead of Rebel without a cause. And a nice little sort of dialogue with their contemporaries, the Beastie Boys. They've taken Fight for Your Right to Party and turned it into Party for Your Right to Fight. Once again, you can use these as mentor texts and encourage students to actually do the same thing with texts that they're familiar with.